Now, the head of the UN Aid Agency for Palestinians says there will be no peace in the region if the root causes of the conflict between Israel and Palestine aren't resolved. Philippe Lazzarini was speaking in Gaza 2 days after a ceasefire was agreed to end an 11-day conflict there. More than 250 people have been killed, most of them Palestinians in the occupied territory.
I am deeply frustrated at this senseless episode of extreme violence that killed civilians, destroyed infrastructure, and threw Gaza back several years. But restoring a sense of normality is not enough. It is not a replacement for peace or for the human rights of all. The root causes of the conflict remain. The occupation, the forced displacement, of which we had a strong reminder in Sheikh Jarrah lately, the blockade and the cycle of violence all remain. This must be resolved.
Meanwhile, both of the border crossings between Israel and Gaza have now been closed. The checkpoint was briefly opened on Friday, allowing foreign journalists to enter the Strip, but Israel has also now closed access to Gaza from the sea. Well, let's speak to Al Jazeera's Safwat Al-Khalout. He joins us now from Gaza. Safwat, I see the UN is calling for unimpeded access, and now we're actually seeing this instead. What reasons are being given for these closures?
Well, this is Gaza. Normally with the Israelis, they don't give specific reasons except for security reasons. Nobody understands what are the security reasons because normally the Israelis, they don't give explanation. That's why most of the time Gaza has been, the crossings of Gaza has been closed for several years. And this opened also the discussion of the issue of Gaza. Gaza is considered the biggest open-air prison in the world. It's controlled by 3 crossings, 2 controlled by Israel, 1 for personnel, 1 for goods, and the 3rd one controlled by Egypt. Most of the time is closed for security reasons because of the safety or the instability in the Sinai. So Gaza has been under emergency basis. Most of the, let's say, the food or the aid or even for the industry comes through Gaza under specific, very restricted measures controlled by the Israelis. So before the war or before the latest escalation, days before, they closed the sea, they closed the 2 only crossing controlled by the Israelis, 1 for personnel called Erez and 1 for individual called for Erez, and 1 for the commercial exchange, which is Karni. By the way, most of the products produced in Gaza are not allowed to go to be exported to the outside world. Gaza used to export lots of products, including furniture, clothes, vegetables, etc., but not anymore, which affected and damaged the economy. Egypt today, there are 130 truckloads of humanitarian aid, vegetables, medicine, clothes, etc., managed to cross into Gaza today. Now UN is depending on Rafah crossing to bring the essential elements. We learned that from tomorrow at 4G, 7 local until 2 in the AM, Israel will open the crossing exceptionally to allow the foreign media also, the journalists, to leave the Gaza Strip. But still, there is no indication for longer term or serious opening for the crossing. The Sea of Gaza is still closed. 3,000 fishermen are not allowed to go into the sea and resume the fishing. Also, still, the roads of Gaza are still closed. The municipality is trying to fix as much as they could to solve the problem of the traffic jam.
Safwat Al-Khalout there on the ground for us in Gaza. Thank you so much, Safwat. Well, meanwhile, the US Secretary of State says President Joe Biden is committed to a 2-state solution. Antony Blinken, who's expected to visit Israel later this week himself, says the immediate concern is rebuilding Gaza.
It's vitally important that that Palestinians feel hope and have opportunity and can live in security, just as it is for Israelis. And there should be equal measures. And in a democratic society, that is, I think, an obligation of any government. So ultimately, I think that hope, that security, that dignity will be found in a Palestinian state. But meanwhile, we have to do everything we can both to address the immediate situation, which is humanitarian, reconstruction in Gaza, starting to improve people's lives in a concrete way.
Our diplomatic editor, James Baze, has more now from West Jerusalem.
If the US is not engaged diplomatically, then there is no diplomacy on this issue. So what Secretary Blinken says when he arrives in the region will be very closely watched, as are his words as he prepares to travel here. He'll be here on Wednesday and Thursday, but in the last couple of hours he's been on US TV, on the ABC network, where he was asked about the conflict. He was asked about US arms sales to Israel, because most of those weapons that were bombarding Gaza were made in the US and were US funded. He said that Israel has a right to defend itself. He was asked about Iran backing Hamas and potentially providing it with weapons. He said that Iran is engaged in many fronts in the Middle East, but he then made the point that's why pursuing a nuclear deal with Iran is so important. He didn't want to get into blaming Iran, it was clear, because of course there are those negotiations about the nuclear deal ongoing in Vienna. They've made considerable progress, but they're now at a very delicate stage. He also made it clear that something has to change, particularly with Palestinians, that they should feel some dignity and some hope. Otherwise, this was all going to happen once again.